Well, hello to the latest Yap versus Yap podcast here at the Film Yap. I'm Christopher Lloyd, joined again by my esteemed colleague, Alec Toombs.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So we have some very newsy items that we wanted to jump on, which is that Tom Hanks, obviously, two-time Oscar-winning actor, plus like 8 more times that he's been nominated, beloved icon of Hollywood, all around nice guy, thinks that movie critics are cocksuckers, to use his exact word. This came in an interview with Conan O'Brien on his podcast. And apparently, you cannot actually grab the audio, at least not without getting a letter from Mr. O'Brien's lawyers. So we can't play it for you, but I'll just read a little something. So he's talking about, of course, just a week and a couple days ago, he had his new movie Here come out, reuniting with his Forrest Gump.
Robin Wright.
Yeah, and Robin
Robert
Wright.
Zemeckis.
Bring the team back to there, and it was kind of what nowadays they would call a mid-level budget movie, $50 million. So not a big budget movie, but not a small budget movie. And it is tanked. It is doing very. I think it garnered $5 million in its opening weekend, which is not good. It's currently 35% of the tomato meter with movie critics, but only 57% with audiences, and audiences are always usually way higher. Like, it's unusual for a film to be under 80% for audiences on the tomato meter. So we'll just jump in right here. And so they were talking about the film not doing well, and also about some of his other films like That Thing You Do that also got critically slammed but have come to be rejuvenated in the years. So he says, let me tell you something about these cocksuckers who write about movies. Can I say that? Somebody wrote about That Thing You Do. Tom Hanks has to stop hanging around on the veterans, on with the veterans of TV, because that's just not. It is just like it's shot on TV. All you need is 20 years between now and then, et cetera, et cetera. So just go ahead. We'll have to say that's the carnival, that's the contest, right? I got faith in that, and that's all right. So, having not heard it directly, obviously Conan O'Brien is a comedian. I get the sense he was very much trying to be funny when he said this. I guess just the idea that, Mr. Hollywood nice guy calling movie critics cocksuckers. First of all, I am not offended in any way, shape, or form, and honestly, I think it was really funny.
Yeah, I wasn't offended either. I find it amusing. I think it was pretty well said, tongue in cheek. And although, I mean, he's not wrong. A lot of us are cocksuckers. Like, critics are weird guys. Like, a lot of us. Like,
Yeah, there are, let's put it, in sort of the classic, like, Anton Ego mold of, the critic from Ratatouille, voiced by Peter Toll. That's kind of like the archetype, certainly a bit old school, but of, just very snooty, pessimistic, glowering, unfriendly, seems to hate the art form in which they write about. Yeah, but even taking that aside, I would agree there are a lot of jerks out there now, and especially when you look at it in the terms of the great, spread of movie critics now, and that it's not, where it was 25 years ago when it was basically like 150 people who wrote for newspapers and magazines and a couple of TV people, and that was about it.
right. Everybody's a critic now.
Yeah, quite literally, like all you need is a podcast or a blog. And even if you're not credentialed by the studios or on listed on Rotten Tomatoes or all that kind of stuff, you can still make your voice heard. And a lot of them, and I'm not saying this to be snooty, don't come from a journalistic upbringing. They didn't work in a newsroom. They didn't have editors telling them this is not good, this is good. But you don't have to. I mean, you didn't come up that way, and obviously, I think
I didn't. I mean, I wrote for my student newspaper at Indiana University for 5 years. Uh,
that's
but
true.
no, I never worked professionally as a journalist.
Yeah, and obviously, I think you can do it the right way, no matter how you come up. And yeah, there's people out there that just enjoy being snarky and nasty and mean, and not just the younger critics. I mean, Rex Reed has basically made that his coin of the realm for 50 plus years of just being a jerk. So Tom, if you're out there, I'm sure you're not listening to us. but I get the sense you very much were joking, and even if you weren't, it's fine. But it kind of spurred the question that I often talk to people about is what is the proper relationship between movie critics and the people who make movies, the actors, the directors, the writers, the studios. Um, so many people in that sort of industry profess to not care what movie critics say or journalists say, but they clearly really really do.
Well,
For
I mean, look at somebody like Kevin Smith. He's gone and talked about critics online a ton.
Yeah. Francis Ford Coppola with his film Megalopolis that just came out, very vocal, trashing critics
Did you
for
did you
not.
see Megalopolis?
Yes, yes, I
I
did.
kind I kind of loved it in a way, actually.
I actually gave it a positive review.
Oh yeah, you reviewed it, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was actually there for the press screening and so forth. But yeah, it's a big chaotic mess. It's kind of, I think, intended to be a chaotic mess, but it's almost like pure cinema. Uh, but it's the sort of movie that really only people who are absolutely just batshit crazy in love with movies can like. If you're sort of just a casual, like, hey, I want to go see a movie, see a story, see a girl and a boy meet, and that's your, Star Wars, MCU, that like that's your level. I just go to movies to be entertained. No, you're not gonna like.
The John Voight, Aubrey Plaza, Shia LaBeouf crossbow scene is like maybe the funniest scene in a movie this year, in all honesty.
Yeah. But so and also slightly different area, but just recently a thing with the NBA star Joel Embiid took exception to something that a sports columnist in Philadelphia wrote and verbally and physically confronted him in the locker room over it. And that brought up an interesting point, this, but what is the right relationship between, because generally there's a great remove. But it's only when, like, for instance, you had an interview with the director of Elevation this week, you
Yep.
know, and so we'll get like these 10 or 15 minute windows talking to people where, to be fair, they're very much on when they're talking to us in that setting, the kind of the press junket, whether in person or virtual. Um, so there's not really a lot of interaction, but sometimes there is. So like, if you're a sports writer writing about local sports players, you're, at some point gonna have, and that's a very different thing. I've often said about like theater critics, it's different to be a theater critic because you're physically going to the theater, even if you may not interact with, you move in the same circles and probably have relationships or at least know a lot of the people. I had a bit of that experience recently where I was at the some events for Heartland Film Festival, and I probably had conversations with 2 dozen filmmakers, either through interviews or just popping up and talking to them. And it's a very different thing when it's a person that you think. And I was lucky. I think almost everybody I talked to, I liked their movie on some level, so I didn't have to, sit there and talk to them. And it's like, yeah, I gave that thing like 2 stars.
I've
But
run into it recently with people like I know in real life. I review their stuff, and generally I'm pretty forthcoming in the review. Like I will be like, "Hey, I know this person," and I have panned some movies from people I know. I don't feel good about it. It's not
yeah,
something I'm seeking to do, but I also need to be true to myself and true to the reader. If I didn't like the movie, I need to be honest about that.
yeah, and see, that I think is the perfect attitude, but also it's sort of, to me, logically brings me to the conclusion, answering my own question of what is the proper relationship between movie critics and the people who make movies. And I kind of think there really shouldn't be one. Um, it can be hard sometimes, particularly like, here in Indiana, we do have a small but growing group of people who are making films in Indiana, and obviously, are not intending to pop off to Hollywood, or they're having success. I mean, Joshua Hull, the screenwriter, some others, Rocky Walls. I think I've probably reviewed every movie he's had at Heartland now over the last 10 years. And so, you kind of bump in, have social media interactions with these people, but on a level of like this, like the Tom Hanks level, like, the big new theatrical releases or streaming releases that are coming out this week, and I'm going to be writing about them. Even if I were like in a Roger Ebert type of, Gene Siskel type of status where I might interact with these people, I don't really think movie critics should, just because. we're human just like anybody else, and it's not so
Right.
much a matter of I feel like I'm going to be nicer to them or their movies. I guess that's the big fear. That's sort of the underlying fear. Um, but it's just like you come into the experience of the movie with expectations or biases or stuff, and I hate going into a movie with stuff. And on the rare occasions where I do go into a movie where I feel like I can't be totally objective, I try and say that in a review. Like when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, I was like, this is my favorite book of all time. I literally like
Sure.
grew up, reading a boy. There's no way I can put aside my feelings about, Tolkien and everything like that. So I mean, I said I'm probably either going to just absolutely hate this movie or absolutely love it. But
Yeah,
I
I
don't
have a
know.
buddy of mine who's an up and coming Indiana filmmaker. He has a movie that's gotten a lot of traction. His name's Jake Belinsky. I
Mhm.
would never, ever review one of Jake's movies. I've been friends with him for over 20 years. I would have no business writing a formal review of something he's made. I'm happy he's doing well. I continue to wish him success. I'm never going to review something he makes.
I have typically when the person is in a smaller role, like I had a friend reach out. Had done the sound editing on a small film probably like a year and ago, and so not the sort of thing that I typically comment upon in a movie is the sound
Sure.
editing. And I put it in the movie like, hey, by the way, but I'm just letting you know this person I know worked on it. Um, I had a film in Heartland that I had a friend who had done some work on. Um, yeah, that can be tough, but I remember, getting back to like the golden age of criticism, the Siskel and Ebert days. They often did befriend movie critics, and
Well, to
would
be
come,
fair, Ebert's a filmmaker too. He wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dells and
yeah,
like,
yeah, fair enough. But I mean, I think my the one that most comes to mind is Werner Herzog. Is that and I hate to say it, I don't think I ever saw at least Ebert, maybe Siskel too, write a negative review of a Herzog movie, even when he did make some absolute, clunkers. Um, I remember also when Spike Lee was like really breaking out in the '80s, early '90s, and they did things with him and like that, and then he got into this thing where he was making movies like like Clockers and Girl Six.
you don't like Clockers?
Hate it.
Oh, I
Hate
think Clockers is a great movie.
Yeah, see, I haven't watched it in 30 years, so who knows? Maybe I was just bored to death by it. It was like 2 hours of waiting for Harvey Keitel as the cop to accuse the kid of doing the crime. It's like they just had to do this stupid dance for 2 hours, and you're like finally towards the end, he's like, and you did it. And like, I was just like, yeah, I don't.
I think it was Mekhi Phifer's first movie. I thought he was great in it. Delroy Lindo is great in that movie.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
Each their own, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to be calling you a cocksucker here in a minute for not liking Clockers. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to remember any interactions I've had over the years with filmmakers or anything like that. I just occasionally like to get like an email, something like that, just because my email is out there, usually like through the Substack. I'm trying to remember. I had the writer director of a movie, probably about a year ago, and I gave it. I mean, I wasn't nasty. I maybe that's part of the equation is even if I hate a movie, I try not to be nasty in my review.
Yeah,
Like,
you're generally nicer than me. If I don't like something, sometimes I really will lay into it. I mean, sometimes I'm just trying to be funny.
yeah, I don't
I
do
don't
that.
want to hurt anybody's feelings. I ripped a movie pretty hard once, and its screenwriter, I think, is one of our subscribers, and he commented on my review, but he was very diplomatic about everything. And my response to him afterwards, diplomatic. It was around Christmas. I wished him a Merry Christmas. And, you know, I think that's the way we need to be. We can compartmentalize these things.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to approach it. But yeah, I had a writer director reach out. I'd been pretty negative with the review, and he basically just said like, "Hey, I appreciate you." It was a smaller film, so he was like, "I appreciate getting a review, even if it wasn't a positive review, just because if you're at that very very low indie level where like you're trying to get a streaming deal or distribution or something like that, just
Right.
having any press that you can point to." out there helps it. Yeah, just having the picture be known. Obviously, if you have
Well,
like all negative
and
reviews,
even when I'm panning a movie, I tend to like to find one, two, three things about it that,
I do that
okay,
too.
this didn't work for me, but A, B, and C did.
Yeah, I try to do that too. Even when I feel something like I gave a review this past week to the best Christmas pageant ever, and I gave it
Okay,
3 out of 5 stars.
sure.
And I said, I was like, honestly, the first 45 minutes was almost death. I mean, it moved so slow. It was not working for me, but it really picked up in the second half. A couple of the child performances I thought were good. I thought Pete
Judy
Holmes
Greer's
was,
great. She's always watchable.
yeah, I thought Pete Holmes was kind of wasted. So I said Judy Greer, I thought played it like very straight and wholesome, like I'm acting in a faith-based movie, so I need to act it that way, which I thought was kind of a mistake. I thought it would have been better if she put some sarcastic spin on it on the performance. So I said all that, but I think that's good. The funny thing, now that I say that, I actually got a lot of reach outs about that review. One, I'm not sure because I didn't follow it, but I think the comment might be from the parent of one of the child actors in it
Oh, interesting.
because it's got like a really unusual surname. The most of the comments I got was, "Why did you rate that as a splat on Rotten Tomatoes instead of as a fresh? Because it's 3 out of 5." Which, if anybody cares about this inside baseball stuff, but I think it's interesting is Rotten Tomatoes, which we could do a whole podcast about Rotten Tomatoes and why it exists and who it's for and all that kind of stuff. But they have an option of you can, but let them automatically upload your reviews or do it manually. And I do it manually specifically for the reason is they do anything that's at the midpoint of your rating scale or above, they count as a fresh. So if I had a 4 star scale, if it was 2 stars, they would rate that as fresh. Which for me, it's not. Like I always say, 3 is like it's an average movie. Anything like 2.5 to 3.5
I
rating.
always tell people I run on a 5-star scale. Anything three or above is a recommendation.
And I
Anything
think
below
and
three,
I
I
think
do not recommend.
most critics work like that, like you. And I'm I guess in the opposite. To me, it's like it really needs to be 3.5 or even 4. Because to me, when it's fresh, is I'm recommending this movie. I'm saying
Right.
this is on something. This is a good movie. I think it's worthwhile. It's worthy of your time. So I don't do that too much. But I get those anytime those things I have like that. I will get a reach out from the studio itself or from the people, the intermediaries that handle the press, asking me to change it on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm always like, no, I'm not going to do that. But yeah,
Well,
so
and that shows character on your part too. You gotta
yeah,
stick to your guns.
yeah. Well, but so again, I'm pretty sure I will try and go listen to the actual audio because you can tell a lot about the tone of something, listening to the audio versus the transcription of it. But I think Tom was just having some fun on a comedy show with a comedian. And if he wasn't, I'm fine. Water, ducks back, all that kind of stuff.
I still
Uh,
haven't seen here. I need to at some point. I
I
think
actually,
you
yeah,
liked it, didn't you?
yeah. All I know on that is actually I like the movie. It's a sentimental film. What I said was you kind of really have to be like 40 or above, have kids or interact with kids, to really appreciate that kind of film. Like I interacted with a lot of our colleagues who are kind of more in that younger range, and they were all just kind of pretty flat about it. I was like, yeah, you kind of have to really have the really overt appreciation of sentimentalism to like a movie like that. But Tom Hanks also said he hates it when people call his movies cute. So I'm sorry, Tom, but I found your latest movie to be, in fact, quite cute. All
I
right.
mean, that thing you do, which we discussed earlier, a very cute movie. I actually love that movie. I watch that movie all the time.
All right, Alec. Well, thanks for joining me. And you're not a cocksucker. I'm not a cocksucker. And thanks to everyone out there for listening.